It has to be said, the way shmup developers work to create a house style, regardless of whether their games were for home or for arcades, contributed to giving the genre plenty to offer back in the day during the genre's popularity. So, when looking at the games from a developer like Compile, who happen to produce shmups for a variety of consoles and home computers, we really can see that progression take place. Especially when we jump from 8-bit systems over to the 16-bits, which brings us nicely into Super Aleste, also known as Space Megaforce, which saw release to the Super NES in 1992. Though it bills itself as part of Compile's long-running series, story-wise it's not really all that connected to it. At least going by the instructions located in the Western releases of the game. But honestly, as you'll find with many a good shmup, it's less about the story here and more about that frenetic, blasting action, which is something Super Aleste brings in spades. Right from the opening, it does something a little different compared to many other games in that it offers both a short game mode alongside the normal game mode. The short game mode serves as an alternative to the caravan modes found in other games, but I find it's also suitable for those shorter sessions where you want a challenge, but you can't really commit to the time needed for a full run of that normal mode. It also serves as great practice because its 4 stages here are remixed versions of those which you'll find in normal mode as well. Speaking of normal mode, it's quite a gauntlet with its whopping 12 stages to conquer. This is where you're going to spend a lot of your time with the game, and for me, it's certainly the satisfying way to play. But note that it is a commitment, as some of the stages here can get quite long to work through. Thankfully, the pacing of the game is well balanced, as you'll find some shorter stages being placed in between those longer ones to keep things getting too monotonous. Most of the stages don't go too far out of the way of the environments you'll find in a shmup. Though, I can't not mention the assault on the starbase in the game's second stage. This one really takes advantage of the Super NES's scaling and rotation features to give the illusion that you're swooping down far from above to attack a region of the base before you zoom up and line up for another pass elsewhere. I love how it offers a distinctive sense of progression, which you don't normally see with a shmup. As for most of them, the places you're attacking tend to be on a one-way journey. Once you fly over a target, whether or not you take it out, you're not seeing it again until you restart and have a new session. But seeing your handiwork come up again as you line up for a new pass from high above, it's something that kind of stays with you. But maybe that's just an odd feeling I get every time I sit down to play this stage. Another one that sticks with me is the 8th stage, but that's for the opposite reason, as here you're fighting your way through a hostile space fleet. It might sound straightforward at first, but juggling the need to avoid and take down enemy fighters, some of which are launched from ships you're flying past, others coming off screen, whilst avoiding stupendous amounts of enemy fire from emplacements, and the backwash of various thrusters and engines as well. But then to cap it all off, you've got surprise debris launched from explosions on the hulls, which, if you're not prepared for, can certainly end your run in a flash. Especially the first time you run into them. For the most part, I feel Super Aleste offers a fair challenge, one that steadily increases over time without jumping too high too fast. Something else I feel helps keep it fair is the power-up system, which uses that formula Compile established all the way back in Zanak to great effect. As with their other games, you collect numbered icons to switch to one of the game's 8 weapons. Unsurprisingly, many of them are based on ideas used in earlier games, so if you've got a favourite, I'm sure you'll find it and be able to use it to maximum effectiveness as well. It's just like me and the missiles, which are certainly my favourite out of what's on offer. There is one change to the formula though, and that comes in the form of the R shoulder button. Depending on which weapon you've got equipped, pressing it or holding it down will change its behaviour. Like for example, your starting weapon, the multiple shot, it changes your firing pattern as you press it. Each time it changes it from focusing forward to spreading out around you in multiple ways. Meanwhile, another weapon, the multi-directional shot, allows you to hold the direction it's firing in whilst you move about freely. These adjustments, I don't think you could call them groundbreaking, but they all offer a small slice of flexibility, which is handy if you can use it at the right time. The real power though comes in the form of the orange capsules, which slowly increase your weapon's power when collected. This of course goes up to a maximum of level 6, indicated in the top corner of the HUD, and of course the higher the level, the more of them you're going to need to collect in order to move up to the next. Though, there are the green ones. They're less common, but collecting one of those will automatically knock your weapon up to the next level. This is not only important from an offensive angle, but a defensive one as well. Being hit by enemy fire or running into some scenery won't instantly destroy you. Instead, if you have powered up your main weapon, it will be reduced in power, and you'll get to have another chance to keep fighting. Which is handy as Super Aleste, much like Compile's other games of this time, tends to be quite generous with the upgrade pickups. Though, it has to be said, if you do get a hit and don't get a chance to upgrade again, being hit again will destroy you and you'll lose a life and be taken back to the nearest checkpoint. Which is where another of its many tricks comes into play, the enemy eraser pickups. Not only do they have an immediate effect, that they clear the screen of all the enemies present, but you get an instant respawn for each one you collect, which is indicated by the gold player icons in the status counter at the bottom right. I will never stop professing my genuine love and appreciation of this mechanic. It's not only one that's pretty easy to accomplish, but it's not one that happens frequently, so it's genuinely a surprise should you manage to nab one and can really save your teeth at the right time should you be taken out. It's something that obviously goes a long way to helping give you that bit more of a fighting chance, and I love it for that. Finally, of course, is your bombs. Like an enemy eraser, they will clear the screen of enemies, but this time in a more refined pattern as they go off. But they are limited in number. Of course, you'll find additional ones released from power-up pickups, indicated by the B icon, and you can stockpile quite a large number of them, so using them judiciously isn't really a problem. So generally, I find Super Aleste is one of, if not the best shmup available for the Super NES. And of all the reasons which I would put it high up on my list, the most important one is this. Unlike many of its peers, there is little to no slowdown present. That might not seem like much when you think about it, but honestly, when so many other shmups for the system happen to have slowdown in various levels, you just expect it to be there. Something which will throw you off when you least expect it, with missed inputs or collisions. So to have it not happen, well, it's such a relief. And it shows you just how well Compile knew their coding chops and how well to use the hardware. Because along with that, there's also a great use of those Super NES hardware features. I've already spoken about the background scaling and rotation tricks used in Stage 2, but there's other ones as well. Some are purely for show, like the sprite scaling in the title sequence, but you find some other neat uses of them too, like the asteroid hazards within Stage 4. Touches like this I found added an extra jolt of life to the proceedings. It helped the game feel that bit more dynamic than you might have expected otherwise. And of course, 16-bit staples like transparency effects and parallax scrolling are also there, giving it those touches as well. The lack of slowdown here means that you have quite the set of responsive controls to deal with. And that's before you factor in the selectable movement speeds, which is also a bit of a shmup staple too, and those let you zip about like an ace should you choose to use it. Though for me, I never really found much of a reason to. The default was zippy enough for me and was good enough for my reactions. The last piece of the Super Aleste cake, if you will, is the soundtrack. When you think shmups, I'm sure for most players, you tend to think of soundtracks with doses of hard rock or fast-paced electronic music. But you won't find that here, as Super Aleste goes for something a bit more laid back. And you might think it wouldn't really work, but honestly, it really does. It doesn't mean there isn't any of that high-paced music in the game, but they're saved more for moments like boss battles, rather than just working your way through the game's stages. And of course, this is just another one of those little examples that show how Compile's expertise in working with the genre really pays off. The overall vibe, atmosphere, aesthetics really pays off here, as it feels far more vibrant, both visually and musically, than many of the other shooters released on the Super NES, or on other systems of the time. Which leads me to a sad realization. Super Aleste is one of the top shmups released on the Super NES, and it is well worth your time to check out. Unless you're someone who just isn't a shooter fan, and that's a sad thing to consider. The problem is, unlike Musha, Compile's equivalent game for the Mega Drive, Super Aleste isn't really available for folks to play these days, at least in a legal form. Now, I'm sure there's reasons for it, the complexities about getting old games out there is challenging from that angle. But it's a bit of a bummer, because it would be lovely if it were available, whether that's on a service like Nintendo's own Switch Online, or any other way that just doesn't require players to have to hunt down a second-hand cartridge. Though of course, I can't ignore that other options do exist. So no matter how you wish to enjoy it, unless you're completely hostile to shmups of course, I believe Super Aleste is one of the finest ones that you should check out, at least if you're a fan of that 16-bit pre-bullet hell style. From a gameplay standpoint, it lacks the brutality that many later games would introduce, while still managing to offer a fair and reasonable challenge for all players. From a technical angle, it stands far above the other shmups in the Super NES's library, with that little slowdown and cool use of the hardware, something I don't think many other shooters really did. And I think it's just an absolute cracker to play from a legendary developer, really being at the top of their game at the time. So, really, what else is there for me to say? Go check it out, and as always, thank you all very much for watching.